My unexpected new family. I always thought that the hot, shirtless neighbor narrative was only a figment of bored soccer moms' imaginations. But just a day after I moved into Willow Creek Street, I spotted an eye-candy neighbor of my own. He was tanned with brown hair and muscular arms. Through the small window of the place I was renting, I spotted him, and I swear I did not mean to be a peeping Tom. But he was much too striking to not be noticed. The odds were not in my favor that day, as my attempt to be discreet was in vain. He was looking around and accidentally met me dead in the eye. Bingo! He winked at me, and in panic, I shut the curtain and leaned against the wall for a bit. Why was I letting this man get me flustered? I was typically a confident man, and suddenly he gets me all worked up. And we have yet to even exchange a single word. I was not letting this happen, so I stormed out of my door, ready to confront the mystery man. To my surprise, he was already sitting on the bench on my porch, a sinister smile plastered onto his face. Oh, that smug look. I want to wipe it off so bad with a kiss. This is your way of greeting your new neighbor? I raised my eyebrow. And yours is to peep at your neighbor like a creep? He retorted playfully, apparently enjoying the way I blushed at his comeback. I was not peeping at you. You were distracting and inappropriate. I defended. He chuckled at my defensive reply. Distracting and inappropriate, huh? He repeated. So you like me? I let out a groan of frustration. But I was not going to lie. His topless get-up was indeed very distracting. Not to mention he was one handsome lad. So how could you blame me? A vulnerable gay man for staring? Every neighborhood has that one egoistic, feeling handsome dude, and I suppose in Willow Creek Street. That's you. Nice to meet you. I'm Finley, I said flatly. He let out a chortle again at my comments, and I could not help but admire how white and straight his teeth were. He had a gorgeous smile. That's probably me, except I'm actually handsome and not just feeling handsome. As you put it, Asher. He extended his hand, and I am your hot neighbor. Despite my initial perception of Asher as cocky and too into himself, we quickly developed a camaraderie. I hated to admit it, but my defenses were weakening. Every time he was out and about with no shirt, I was even starting to think that he was doing it on purpose. Not only did he start gardening regularly with no top, but he even sat on his porch whilst reading topless. You need extra funds to get you a shirt? I joked one day as I handed him a glass of lemonade. Like the good neighbor that I was. As usual, he laughed at my jest and showed off those pearly white teeth. I also realized then that he had thick, luscious lips. Man, what was Asher doing to me? No, I like to think it's my duty to give you something to look forward to. He teased right back. While most of our exchanges were full of lightheartedness and sarcasm, we also started developing a much deeper bond rooted in our common interests. We both loved to cook and bake, so it became habitual for me to invite Asher over whenever I was trying out a new dish. Oddly enough, he never invited me to his house, but I did not ponder much over it. Okay, try this, I said a few days later as we tried cooking a beef stew. I was about to hand him over the spoon so he could taste the dish himself. But then he scooted closer, as though to tell me to feed him, and so I mustered up the courage and did. He moaned, and I felt a fire igniting in me. I just wanted to lean in and kiss him so bad. But thankfully I did not. God, you are one excellent cook. Aren't you? If I could just marry you and take you home. He teased. I rolled my eyes playfully and gestured towards the side of his mouth where some remnants of the stew remained. I gestured for him to wipe it off. But he did not quite get me. So in the spur of the moment, I leaned in and used my finger to remove the sauce. I brushed his lips ever so slightly in the process. And our eyes met. With our eyes locked, I didn't know what propelled me to move closer to him. But I did, and so did he. I was positive that we would be lip-locking if it were not for the interruption of my daughter. Kendall, Dad, I'm home, she announced, and Asher and I came to our senses. I introduced Kendall to Asher a few days ago, and they got along so well. Kendall even noted that Asher would make a good father, as he fell in the category of a cool dad. I asked her how I fared in that area, and she simply shrugged but kept a playful smile on her face. I love my daughter wholeheartedly, and I cherish our amazing dynamic with her. Ever since her beloved mother passed away, it has only been the two of us, and I have been more than content to have raised such a loving daughter. However, Seeing how she bonded with Asher at that very moment gave me flashes of what life would be like if I had someone to raise her with. She was swiftly growing, and soon she would be in college. I could only hope that I was right in thinking that Asher could make a great second father to her. Over the course of the next few weeks, Asher and I fell into a routine. He frequently came over, although not every day. Sometimes we would spend the afternoons on my porch, or on his, but he still never invited me inside his house. One cold night, we just decided to watch television together as we devoured the banana bread that we had baked earlier that afternoon. Even the events that preceded this fateful night were wild. While I was mixing the wet ingredients in a large bowl, Asher's massive figure came up behind me, presumably to take one of the eggs. But being the playful guy he is, of course he had to wrap his arms around me while retrieving the egg. I could not help but blush when I felt him pressed against me. Later that night, we were enjoying the quiet atmosphere when he absent-mindedly put his large hand over my thigh. It was an absent-minded gesture, I was sure, but very soon he started drawing circles over it, and I honestly enjoyed it. It had been a while since I had a quiet and intimate moment like that. "That okay?" he asked softly. I nodded and could not conceal my smile. No matter how playful he was indeed a gentleman. In return, I started gently running my fingers through his arm, and one way or another, that was how we ended up in a cozy, cuddly position. Since then, cuddling became one of our things. Watching TV cuddles, afternoon naps cuddles. The next day I was outside doing some gardening of my own when a few of my neighbors passed by. They were the clique of middle-aged women from the neighborhood who had always been friendly toward me and Kendall since we moved in. However, this time around, as soon as they spotted me, their chatter died down at once, and a few of them were downright glaring at me. I even waved, but to no avail. They simply gave me dirty looks. What on earth did I do? The exact same incident happened the following day when I waved to my next-door neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, as he was leaving for work. But the jolly old man who always greeted me ignored my greeting and even shot me a dirty look. A passerby witnessed this. It was Mrs. Garcia, who lived a few houses down. Her daughter went to school with Kendall, so we got along fine too. She shot me a sympathetic smile as she witnessed my hostile exchange with Mr. Jenkins. "Tough time. Must be difficult to live amidst all those chatter," she said as she stopped in front of my house. "Chatter? What are you talking about?" I asked. "What word hasn't reached you?" My oh my. The past few days Mrs. Jansen had been spreading nasty stuff about you and poor Asher. I thought you guys knew. Because she literally had a rant on Facebook about two neighbors having an affair and blatantly prancing around cheating. Mrs. Garcia explained. So that was why I had been receiving hostility left and right. Mrs. Jansen, the resident neighborhood gossiper and my other next-door neighbor, had been talking trash about me. Look, she even involved Asher, although my friendship with Asher had gone more intimate, and we were definitely inseparable. This was out of line. Wait, an affair? What did Mrs. Jansen say? I'm very much single. As you know, Kendall's mom passed away when she was a young girl, so I'm a widower. How is that cheating? And besides, Asher and I are not even officially together yet, they retorted. Mrs. Garcia's eyes bulged out, unbelieving of what I was saying. Why, you don't know about Katrina? She stuttered. Who? I questioned. Asher's wife. My dear child, replied Mrs. Garcia. I felt weak in my knees upon hearing this, and I excused myself from Mrs. Garcia, who looked very sympathetic. She was a good woman, and I knew she hated to break the news to me, but she was much too kind to lie straight to my face. Asher has a wife? That was why he could never invite me into his house. How come I never saw her? Was she away for work? And her things and memoirs were laying around the house. So Asher wanted to keep me away from their abode? How dare he flirt so bluntly with me and shower me with suggestive comments just as I thought we were finally progressing to the next step. And I was ready to open my heart to love again. He does this. Since Anna, Kendall's mom, passed away, I have not been able to love a woman again. The wound of seeing her dead body on our kitchen floor is still fresh like it was just yesterday. Eventually, I taught myself how to love again. But this time I found my interest laying in men. I could never look at women the same way again after the heart of losing Anna. I opened my heart to men years later. As difficult as it was, I propelled myself forward and found ways to express my now. I am afraid that after Asher's secret has been exposed, I may never be able to love ever again. Later that evening, Asher came over with some fresh flowers and a box of cookies he had baked earlier. "Picked some flowers up for you because I know you love them fresh," he announced as he plopped next to me and put his arm over my shoulder. His enthusiasm was met by silence, and I could feel his eyes on me as I looked straight ahead and had my arms folded. "What's up?" he asked gently. "You good? You want me to order takeout or something?" I turned towards him then and huffed. "When were you planning to tell me you have a wife?" I asked bluntly, hurt from Mrs. Garcia's revelation earlier that day and the deep betrayal Asher has done. He was shocked upon hearing this. Evidently guilt-ridden, my heart dropped, as part of me was expecting that the allegations were not true. But his silence and facial expression confirmed it. So Mrs. Jansen was right in accusing me to be a home wrecker. I stated, "I am disappointed but not that surprised. In retrospect, you are too good to be true. No wonder you did not let me into your home ever. Is your wife away? Are her things lying around your house? And you are too scared for me to discover them?" He quickly took my hand into his. But I quickly retracted it. "Please, Finley, hear me out," he pleaded. "I have a wife on paper. But we're just best friends. I swear, there is no intimacy between us. There never was, and there never will be. How can you say that point blank? Yes, you lied. You hid this important thing from me. You hurt her feelings in the process." I shouted, "Get out." He did not utter another word, although his eyes were pleading for me to listen to him and hear his side. I was not having it though. I thought I had my heart broken irreversibly when I lost Anna. But before she left, she blessed me with the most loving daughter, Kendall, who eventually mended my heart and taught me how to love again. Now that I found Asher, I thought that I could finally love romantically again. But after hearing Mrs. Garcia's revelation, I just thought to myself, I can never love again. I did not hear from Asher for about a week or so. Quite frankly, I did not leave my house unless I was absolutely sure he was not around. I used the good old window to sneak a peek. I was avoiding him at all costs. And Kendall must have noticed his absence and my odd behavior, because she asked me about him just last night. I told her the truth, saying that we were no longer friends and not to ask me any more questions about him. My ever-loving daughter simply shook her head and told me she was there for me if I was going through everything. I suppose I have not been that low-key in disguising my melancholy. I heard Asher's car start, and so I peeked on the window and saw him leaving, likely to get groceries. If this were any other day, we would have gone together. I took this as a cue to do my gardening so that by the time he comes back, I would be done. I was going about my business when the door to Asher's house opened. My first instinct was to run back to my house and continue my isolation. But a woman on a wheelchair emerged. She propelled herself forward but remained on their porch. A kind smile was etched on her face as she beckoned me over. Despite my initial hesitation, I looked around for signs of Asher and saw none. So I went over swiftly. "Hey, Finley," greeted the woman. "Do you know me?" I asked, puzzled. She smiled widely and just looked so kind that I could not help but smile back. "Of course, silly. I'm Jess, and I know your relationship with my husband," she replied. I was aghast, and I was pretty sure my mouth went agape. "You're his wife? I am so sorry for everything. I did not know," I quickly said. Please forgive me. I promise to stay away. The last thing I want is to undermine the sanctity of your marriage." She approached me and guided me to sit on the porch, and she clasped her hand against mine. "Dear, you don't need to apologize. I have known all along, and you have nothing to be sorry about. Asher and I, it's complicated. Enlighten me, please." Asher and I met when we were in diapers, and we've been inseparable since. He has always been the sympathetic type. You know, growing up, he was always my protector from bullies who mocked me for my disability. I pretty much accepted that I'd grow old alone and never experience the wedding of my dreams. So imagine my utter shock when Asher proposed the idea of us getting married. She explained. I was beyond shock. Does this mean that Asher's marriage was merely for show? Does it mean he is not actually in love? You're no homewrecker, Finley. There is no intimacy between me and Asher, and I certainly do not have feelings for him more than a best friend. Our marriage was simply one of convenience and a product of our lifelong friendship. But that still doesn't change the fact that Asher essentially hid you from me. I commented. Jess smiled and tapped my hand in comforting circles. Asher is much too kind to really voice out to me that he is falling in love. Finley. He talks about you as the new neighbor. But I see it for what it is. I've seen it since the day you moved. He is falling in love. And I bet he feels bad to tell me because he doesn't want me to feel neglected. Jess explained. I am so sorry. Jess. I repeated. I never wanted any of these. I never wanted to hurt you or anyone. I lingered. You love Asher. She completed for me. And I nodded and hung my eyes low. And don't think for a second that you need to be sorry. I've never held any grudge against you. In fact, I'm thankful for you because it's been a while since I've seen Asher genuinely happy until you came. You are doing us both a favor actually. You made him the happiest he's ever been. And in return, I am happy to see my best friend happy. So no hard feelings? I asked. None. With that, I hugged Jess tightly. Inside, I needed time to absorb this. Yes, but thank you. Later that week, I was gardening when a group of gossip mongers were glaring at me from an adjacent lot. It seemed that although Asher and I were not hanging out anymore, they were still relentlessly harassing me whenever I went out. I ignored them for the most part, but at times it was infuriating. To add salt to the wound, Asher decided that it was the perfect time to return home. As with the last couple of weeks, I have been avoiding him at all costs, and our interactions were limited to longing looks from afar. However, this time he was with Jess, and he escorted her out of the car. It genuinely baffled me how I could have missed Jess during all those times Asher and I spent together. Was I that oblivious? Was I that lost in his eyes? Probably. He was about to escort Jess into the house when one of the middle-aged ladies passed by. The others following her led. It was Mrs. Jansen, the notorious gossip maker and the typical Karen. Finley, if you had any shame left in you, you'd apologize to Jess after all you have done. Shame on you, she exclaimed. Completely unsolicited. I don't think I have anything to apologize for. For starters, your sexuality? What a shame that such a handsome man with a beautiful daughter can be gay. That is so beyond. To my surprise, Asher came to my defense. And Jess looked infuriated at the air of homophobia that Mrs. Jansen and her friends were exhibiting. With all due respect, ma'am, I'd appreciate if you keep your nose out of our business, said Asher calmly. I inwardly praised him for his control, as it was evident that he was beyond angry. I agree, said Jess. Mrs. Jansen and her clique seemed astonished that even Jess came to my defense. After all, they were under the impression that I was ruining Jess and Asher's marriage. Leave Finley alone, will you? He's been an excellent friend to both me and my husband. If there is anyone who should be shamed, it's you for propagating fake stories, for being so invested in our lives, and most especially for your homophobia. Mrs. Jansen's companions were floored. It seemed like they really believed Jeff's words and now turned against the lying Mrs. Jansen. The latter seemed embarrassed as the group walked off, leaving the three of us alone by the pavement. Thank you, Jess, I said, cracking a smile. I spotted Asher looking at me as if wanting to say a word and waiting for me to address him. But I merely ignored him. Happy birthday, Dad. Close your eyes and make a wish. It was a few days later, and Kendall had prepared me a simple birthday dinner. It was only the two of us, but I was beyond content, as I was finally free from the gossip mongers in the neighborhood, and I could go back to living my life peacefully sans Asher. It was heartbreaking, but I honestly did not know what to do. Although I was coming to terms with him in Jess' arrangement, I still felt terrible for being kept in the dark. However, as I closed my eyes and was about to blow my candle, I could not help my thoughts from returning to him. He was still the one I wanted. Okay, Dad, open your eyes, said Kendall softly. To my surprise, she was not the only one standing there anymore. As if the gods had heard my birthday wish. Asher was standing there. He was holding a bouquet of tulips, my favorite flowers, and a cake of his own. Happy birthday. Okay, he said. Before anything, I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for keeping you in the dark about Jess. I just didn't want to drive you away. I promise I wanted to tell you about her and our arrangement. But before I knew it, I started falling in love with you. And I did not know how to tell you about my marriage without driving you away. But you did, Asher, by not telling me. You inadvertently pushed me away too as soon as I found out. He looked downcasted, and at that moment I realized I had forgiven him. I wanted to envelop his lips with mine and tell him we were going to be okay. I know, and I cannot express how sorry I am. Over the past few weeks, I've been in contact with Kendall to ask about you. I am so thankful that she set this up so we can finally be at peace. I love you, Finley. My eyes were glossy with tears. All this time I thought he was fine and that he did not mind the distance we put between us because of all the drama. Little did I know he had been checking up on me. The baked goods, the flowers I brought home occasionally, the little gifts, they were all from him. Dad, Kendall explained, and sorry they were not from me. But I did give you some gifts too. Okay, Rob just thought you wouldn't accept anything from him. So he used me as a medium. Asher, I don't know what to say. This is insane, I said, but what I do know is that I love you too. With that, he gave me a bear hug and handed me his gifts. Please give me a second chance, and I will make everything right. I nodded ardently but was concerned. But what about Jess? As if on cue, Kendall escorted her from the back room on her wheelchair. But with a gift for me too. I'm here. Happy birthday, sweetie. Kendall and I conspired to make all of this happen and for you two to finally make up. And what about me? Well, I'm already happy that I got the wedding of my dreams. Although clearly Asher is not the man of my dreams. She said jokingly. Hey, Asher exclaimed. Sorry, Asher. I love you forever as a best friend. But you are nowhere near my dream man, said Jess. As a matter of fact, we'll be divorcing in paper. But seeing as we are best friends, Jess will continue to stay in my house. Asher explained. Oh my God, that's perfect. It's like we're one happy family, exclaimed Kendall. I could not help but smile as Asher came over and put his arms around mine and kissed my forehead. Kendall, on the other hand, wheeled Jess towards the dining area. I always wanted a big family of my own, and in some unexpected ways, I ended up with one. Summary. Single dad Finley has just moved into Willow Creek Street with his daughter, Kendall. Almost immediately, he spots his hot neighbor named Asher, whose playful and teasing tactics seemed to get under the skin of Finley very quickly. The two developed a bond through baking, cooking, and watching movies together. However, the two's closeness was scrutinized by a busybody neighbor, Mrs. Jansen, who was also a notorious gossip and started spreading stories about Finley and Asher. Unbeknownst to Finley, Asher actually has a wife. Another neighbor accidentally reveals this information to Finley, and he breaks off his relationship with Asher. Kendall, Finley's daughter, notices the devastation his father has been experiencing and decides to coordinate with Asher. Kendall is revealed to be the daughter of Finley from his marriage whereby unfortunately his wife passed away due to a heart attack. And he thought he could never love romantically again. Asher and Finley continued to be at a distance. But one day as neighbors continued harassing Finley for allegedly being a homewrecker, both Asher and Jess come to his defense. Finally on Finley's birthday, Kendrick conspired with Asher and Jess to prepare him a surprise. Finley and Asher finally reconciled. And it was revealed that for formality's sake, Jess and Asher will be ending their arrangement and getting a divorce. Finley gives Asher a second chance, and together the four of them formed an unexpected new family. The end. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our Rainbow Force and stay wholesome.